Mom, maybe it's best you just stay out of the kids' schooling. You're just a useless old woman now. That time in your life, it's over. David's words hung in the kitchen air like a toxic cloud. The fresh scent of the coffee I'd just brewed choked in my throat, bitter on my tongue. My wrinkled fingers tightened on the edge of the counter, bracing against what felt like a physical blow to my chest. Stephanie, my daughter-in-law, looked away, pretending to organize Ethan's school papers spread across the table. Her silence was a screaming, damning agreement. I felt the full weight of my 67 years like never before. Every wrinkle, every silver strand, every ache in my joints seemed to seize me all at once. I looked at my hands, the same hands that cradled David as an infant, that worked 2 jobs to feed him, that signed away my dreams on tuition checks. Now these hands were just those of a useless old woman. I didn't shed a tear. Not there. Not in front of them. I rose silently, leaving my half-empty coffee cup, and walked to the small room in the back. Now, my space. It used to be a glorified storage closet, crammed with their forgotten junk. How bitterly ironic that now I felt like just another discarded item. I closed the door, and only then did the tears come. Silent, scalding, tracing lines down a face that was once admired, kissed, respected. You must be wondering how I got here. How the woman who sacrificed everything for her son ended up being treated like a burden. Let me tell you how it all began. About a year ago, David arrived at my small house on a sunny Sunday. I'd been living alone ever since Robert, my husband, died when our son was just 12. The house was modest. 2 bedrooms, a combined living room and kitchen, a small backyard where I tended my plants. But it was mine. Every inch of that place whispered our story of overcoming hardship. "Mom, we need to talk about the future," David said, cutting into a slice of the coffee cake I'd baked specially for his visit. He looked sharp, as always. A well-tailored suit even on a Sunday, hair impeccably styled. So different from the scrawny boy I'd struggled to raise alone. "We're concerned about you living by yourself," he continued. "Have you thought about selling this house?" I looked around at the walls that had witnessed so many nights I spent bent over fabric, stitching clothes to make what little ends met, at the sofa where I'd read stories to David, at the table where we'd celebrated his acceptance into law school. Selling? But why? I'm fine here. "Mom, be practical," he insisted. "This house is getting old. The neighborhood isn't what it used to be. What if you fall? What if you need help in the middle of the night?" There was genuine concern in his eyes, or at least that's what I desperately wanted to believe. "We have a spacious guest room at our place. The kids would love to have Grandma close by, and you could help us with them after school." The idea of seeing my grandchildren daily made my heart race. Ethan, with his curious eyes, always riddling the world with questions. Chloe, with her sweet, impish way, running into my arms with every visit. I missed them during the long, silent days of my routine. "And what would I do with this house?" I asked, still hesitant, a fragile hope taking root. "Sell it, of course. The money would secure your financial future. You've worked so hard, Mom. You deserve to rest now." In that moment, a profound wave of gratitude washed over me. My son was taking care of me, offering me a place in his life, in his home. After so many years of sacrifice, I would finally reap my due. A month later, the house where I'd lived for 3 decades was sold. I divided the money, half to help with renovations at David and Stephanie's house. They wanted to expand the kitchen and build a recreation area. half for my retirement. The Social Security I received was barely enough, and my savings would give me more peace of mind. The move was swift. I didn't have many belongings. A lifetime of scrimping and saving had taught me to live with the essentials. My clothes, some well-worn books, photo albums, my trusty old sewing machine, and small mementos that whispered our family's story. The guest room at David and Stephanie's house was genuinely spacious, with a comfortable bed and a private bathroom. In the first few days, I felt like a cherished guest. Stephanie had placed fresh flowers on the nightstand, and the grandchildren had drawn welcome signs. "Grandma, are you going to live with us forever?" Chloe asked, bouncing on my new bed the first night. "God willing, sweetheart," I replied, kissing her forehead. The first few weeks were a period of adjustment. I learned the house routine, the kids' schedules, everyone's breakfast preferences. When Stephanie needed quiet for her home office, I tried to make myself useful without being intrusive. I started picking up the children from school 3 times a week. I prepared snacks, helped with homework, listened to their stories about the day. Those were precious moments that filled my heart with quiet joy. At night, I prepared dinner for everyone. I pulled out old recipes, the ones David loved as a child. Cooking had always been my way of showing love. "This is delicious, Susan," Stephanie commented the first few times, serving herself a portion of my famous pot roast. David smiled, looking satisfied with the arrangement. "See, Mom, didn't I tell you it would be good for everyone?" But gradually, I noticed small changes, subtle comments, quick glances exchanged between David and Stephanie whenever I did something different from what they were used to. "The kids don't need dessert every day, Susan," Stephanie commented one night when I served homemade caramel flan. "Ethan needs to get to bed early to do well at school. Those bedtime stories are making him stay up too late," she said on another occasion. I tried to adapt, to follow their rules. After all, this wasn't my home anymore. It was theirs. I started noticing that Stephanie would quietly redo some of the tasks I'd done. She'd reorganize the clothes I folded, re-iron the shirts I'd ironed. "That's just her way," David justified when I mentioned it. "Stephanie's a perfectionist." Then came David's promotion. He was named partner at the law firm, a dream he'd chased for years. The house started receiving frequent visitors, colleagues, important clients, people David was keen to impress. On one of those nights, I prepared a special dinner. I spent the entire day in the kitchen, making appetizers, the main course, and the dessert that was my absolute pride. My classic caramel flan, the recipe I inherited from my mother. The table was set, the house impeccable. I felt useful, contributing to my son's rising success. When the guests arrived, 3 elegant couples, all lawyers, I stayed discreetly in the kitchen, only appearing to serve. That's when I overheard. Stephanie was in the hallway with one of the guests, going to show off the newly renovated recreation area. "The food is marvelous," the woman praised. "You have quite a cook." There was a brief pause, pregnant with unspoken meaning, before Stephanie responded. "Actually, that's David's mom. She's staying with us. Temporarily." Temporarily? We had never discussed a time limit. "Oh, it's so nice to have help around the house," the guest continued. "But aren't you thinking about hiring someone professional? I have a wonderful housekeeper I could recommend." "We're thinking about it," Stephanie replied, her voice dropping. "We really need to hire proper help. David's mom is just getting too slow." Too slow. The words hit me like a physical slap. I continued serving dessert, smiling politely, but something profound had shattered inside me. That night, after everyone left, I lay awake staring at the ceiling. Too slow, too old, a burden. The next morning, David came to thank me for dinner. It was a huge success, Mom. Everyone raved about the food. I wanted to ask about the temporarily, about the proper help. But the words caught in my throat, swallowed with bitter coffee. A week later, David summoned me for a talk. Stephanie was beside him, wearing that familiar expression, a mix of discomfort and resolve. Mom, we were thinking. The little room in the back is practically empty since we put everything in the outdoor storage unit. We thought it might be more private for you. Private. I understood the thinly veiled meaning. They wanted to put me out of sight, out of mind. The little room was a former storage shed, partially cleared. It had a tiny, grudging window, unpainted walls, and sat right next to the laundry area. Far from the main bedrooms, far from family life. Of course, I replied, swallowing the bitter lump in my throat. If you think it's better. That same afternoon, David and Stephanie moved my things. My dresser didn't fit. I had to live out of suitcases shoved under the bed. My books remained in dusty boxes stacked in a corner. My old sewing machine, my sole hobby, was relegated to the garage because, they said, there wasn't any space. I adapted again. I started avoiding common areas when it wasn't necessary. I'd make breakfast for everyone and then stay in my small room until it was time to pick up the kids from school. At night, after dinner, I'd retreat early. The children noticed the change. "Why doesn't Grandma sleep closer to us anymore?" I heard Chloe ask one night. "Grandma needs her own space," Stephanie responded. "Older people like to be alone." It wasn't true. The loneliness cut deeper than any ache in my arthritis. Then, last week, the explosion finally happened. Ethan brought home his report card with low grades in English and math. Stephanie was furious. "You're not helping him with his homework properly," she accused, her voice tight, right there in the kitchen. "It's your responsibility to make sure he's studying after school." I tried to explain that I'd noticed the boy was struggling. "Maybe he needs a special evaluation. Robert, my husband, he had dyslexia. It could be something similar." That's when Stephanie completely lost it. "You barely managed to raise your own son, right? And now you want to give advice about mine?" The sheer cruelty of her words just sucked the air right out of me. David, who usually stayed silent during these arguments, surprisingly intervened. For a brief, dizzying second, I thought he'd defend his mother. But then came those words I'll never forget. "Mom, maybe it's best you just stay out of the kids' schooling. You're just a useless old woman now. That time in your life, it's over." And just like that, we were back to that moment I got up from the table, leaving my coffee half empty, and retreated to the little room in the back. That night, while everyone else slept, I rummaged through memories like sifting through a forgotten drawer, searching for a lost self. I remembered the nights I'd sew until dawn, supplementing my meager secretary's salary, just to make sure David had school supplies. The times I pretended not to be hungry so there'd be enough food for him. The money saved, penny by painstaking penny, for his law school. I also thought of Robert, my husband, and how utterly disappointed he'd be to see our son treating his mother this way. When the sun finally touched the window, I'd made my decision. I grabbed my phone and called Deborah, my friend from way back. She'd been widowed 2 years before me and always invited me to share an apartment. An offer I'd always turned down, unwilling to leave my little house. Deborah, what a pleasant surprise. Her cheerful voice brought the first genuine smile to my face in days. Deborah, is that offer of yours to share an apartment still on the table? There was a brief, hopeful pause. Of course it is. But what happened? Weren't you living with your son? It's quite a story, I replied, allowing a hint of weariness to creep into my voice. But I need a fresh start. Over the next 3 days, I quietly organized my departure. I called the bank and confirmed that my share of the house sale money was still untouched in my savings, enough to rent a small apartment and live modestly for quite a while. On the morning of the 4th day, I packed my bags. There weren't many. I placed them in the living room while the family ate breakfast. Chloe was the first to notice. "Where are you going, Grandma?" she asked, clutching my legs with that sweet way she had that melted my heart. "Grandma's going to live somewhere else, honey." David and Stephanie exchanged stunned glances when they saw the bags. "What's all this, Mom? Are you going on a trip?" David asked, his brow furrowed with confusion. "No, son. I'm moving out. I've rented a small apartment near Deborah's." The silence that followed was thick enough to cut with a knife. Stephanie was the first to slice through it. "With what money?" she asked, making no effort to hide her shock. I smiled calmly, a strange, liberating peace settling over me. "With the half I saved from selling my house. Did you really think I'd just hand over everything?" David's face went ashen. I knew he'd been counting on that money for the new car he'd been talking about endlessly. But what about the kids? Who's going to watch them after school? The question hung there, stark and revealing. It wasn't my presence they missed, but my utility. A useless old woman like me shouldn't be trusted with that, should she? I'm sure you'll figure something out. I kissed my grandchildren, promising to visit often. Ethan looked bewildered. Chloe began to cry. It hurt to leave them, a sharp ache, but I knew I could see them on my own terms now, with my dignity fiercely intact. When the taxi arrived, David tried to stop me. "Mom, I didn't mean what I said. You know how stressed I've been." I looked into the eyes of the boy I raised, now a man who no longer recognized the woman who had sacrificed everything for him. "I forgive you, son, but I will never again allow myself to be treated like that. Not by you, not by anyone." I got into the taxi, my heart heavy, but my soul lighter than it had been in months. Through the window, I saw David standing on the sidewalk, a truly stunned expression on his face. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't expected his useless old woman to have the audacity to reclaim her life. As the car pulled away, I thought of the words my own mother told me when I faced widowhood. "Susan, you are stronger than you think." She was right. And now, at 67, I was about to discover exactly how much strength I still had inside me. The taxi turned the corner, leaving behind the house where I'd been diminished until I almost disappeared. Ahead of me, an uncertain path, but one that was finally mine. Completely mine. Deborah was waiting for me on the sidewalk of the small 3-story building. A warm, genuine smile already gracing her face, a sight I hadn't seen in ages. At 70, she still radiated that infectious energy, her gray hair cut in a chic bob, her colorful clothes mirroring her vibrant personality. "Susan!" she exclaimed, hugging me tight as I stepped out of the taxi. "Welcome to your new life." The apartment was modest, 2 small bedrooms, a combined living room and kitchen, a simple bathroom, but it was spotless and airy. Large windows streamed in natural light, and Deborah had placed pots of vibrant flowers in every corner. "It's humble," she said as she showed me what would be my room. "But it's ours. Ours." The word settled over me, so comforting, so profoundly right. A place where I belonged, where I wasn't an intruder. "It's perfect," I replied, feeling the tears finally come. Not from sadness, but from a profound, welling relief. That first night, Deborah uncorked a bottle of cheap wine, and we toasted to what she called our rebirth. We talked late into the night, like teenagers at a slumber party, confessing secrets and dreams. I poured out everything. The small, daily humiliations, the indignity of the back room, David's crushing words. "You know what hurts the most?" I confessed, swirling the wine in my glass, the truth aching in my chest. "It's that I sacrificed everything for him. Everything." I remember clearly the night Robert died. A massive heart attack at 45. David was only 12, still a boy who desperately needed his dad. I was 42 and suddenly found myself utterly alone, with bills to pay and a son to raise. That first night without Robert was the quietest, most terrifying of my life. After David finally fell asleep, exhausted from crying so much, I sat at the kitchen table and furiously crunched numbers. The life insurance was minimal. Savings were painfully meager. My salary as an administrative assistant wouldn't be enough. "How am I going to do this, Robert?" I whispered to the empty kitchen, as if my husband could possibly answer me. The next morning, I made the first of many difficult decisions. I called my boss and asked for overtime. In the evenings, I got out my mother's old sewing machine and started taking on small repair jobs. David found me asleep on fabrics in the living room around 2 in the morning. "Mom, you need to rest," he said, with the premature maturity children develop when they face profound loss. "Just a little longer, honey. I need to finish this for tomorrow." That became our frequent dialogue. David grew up watching his mother work tirelessly, a silent, unwavering force. When he turned 14, he wanted to get a job to help out. "Absolutely not," I replied, my voice firm. "Your job is to study. I want you in college someday." One night when David was 15, we had a conversation that now, sitting in Deborah's apartment, came back to me with agonizing clarity. I was stitching a client's prom dress when David came into the living room, holding a crumpled paper. "Mom, I need you to sign this." It was a permission slip for a school trip. 3 days in Washington, D.C. to study American history. The cost was almost half my monthly salary. "Son, I don't know if we can afford it." "It's fine," he interrupted, snatching the paper back. "I already knew you'd say no." The raw disappointment on his face shattered my heart. That night, after he'd gone to bed, I called 3 clients, offering extra sewing services. I worked deep into the night for 2 weeks, fueled by determination and black coffee. The morning I handed him the signed permission slip and the money for the trip, David hugged me tight, a child's fierce embrace. "When I'm a lawyer, I'm going to buy us a big house, Mom. You'll never have to work again." A child's promises. So sincere in the moment, so easily forgotten by the man. He was such a good boy, I told Deborah, wiping away a solitary tear. Sensitive, grateful. I don't know when that changed. "People change when money and status enter the equation," Deborah replied, always direct. "And that daughter-in-law of yours sounds like quite a piece of work, Susan." I laughed for the first time in days. Deborah always had a knack for easing tension with her blunt honesty. "What are you going to do now?" she asked. I looked out the window at the starry, infinite night. Live, Deborah. Simply live. In the following days, I organized my new space. Deborah had stored some furniture from her old house in the building's storage unit. A dresser, an armchair, a bookshelf. Little by little, the room started to feel like mine. On the third day, David called. His voice sounded strained, controlled, as if each word was weighed. "Mom, how are you doing?" "Well, son, adjusting." "The kids are asking about you," Chloe cried last night. I felt a pang in my chest. My grandchildren were innocent pawns in all of this. "You can bring them to visit me whenever you want. Maybe Sunday," he suggested, a hint of hesitation. "Sunday sounds great." There was an uncomfortable silence. "Mom, about what happened. I really am sorry." I spoke without thinking. I closed my eyes. The sting of those words, useless old woman, still fresh. Words have power, David. They can wound deeper than any physical blow sometimes. "I know," he rushed to say. "We're having trouble getting organized without you. The nanny we hired isn't reliable, and Stephanie's stressed with work." So that was it. He wasn't calling to truly apologize, but to solve a practical problem. "I'm sure you'll find a solution," I replied, the same cutting words I'd used when I left his house. "Mom, you're not thinking of coming back, are you?" The question caught me off guard. Not the question itself, but the sheer breathtaking audacity of it. "No, David, I'm not." Another pause. Longer this time, thick with his unspoken realization. "I understand. Well, we'll see you Sunday then." When I hung up, Deborah was standing in my bedroom doorway, arms crossed, one eyebrow elegantly arched. "He wanted you to come back, didn't he?" I nodded, and you said no. I'm proud of you, Susan. That afternoon, Deborah invited me to check out the community center where she volunteered 3 times a week. It was a simple but welcoming place, a hub where seniors gathered for various activities. "We need someone to teach basic sewing," Deborah commented as she introduced me to the other volunteers. "You'd be perfect." The idea of being useful again, of sharing a skill I'd mastered, ignited a small flame inside me. I accepted immediately. The next day, I rescued my sewing machine from David's garage. Stephanie answered the door, her discomfort palpable. "Susan, I wasn't expecting you. Just came for my sewing machine. Won't take long." As I disconnected the cords and prepped the machine for transport, Ethan ran into the garage. "Grandma, you came back!" His tight hug almost knocked me over. I knelt to be at his height. "I just came to get something, sweetie. But you're going to visit me on Sunday, remember?" His little eyes, so much like David's at that age, welled up with immediate tears. "Why did you leave? Dad said you needed your own place, but I wanted you to stay." How do you explain the complexities of adult relationships to an 8-year-old? How do you talk about dignity, respect, and boundaries? "Sometimes, sweetie, we have to make difficult choices to be true to ourselves," I explained softly. "But that doesn't mean I love you any less. Never." He nodded, not truly understanding, but accepting the explanation for now. When I left, carrying the heavy sewing machine, I saw Stephanie watching from the kitchen window. Our gazes met briefly. There was no hostility in hers, just a distant, unreadable emptiness. I wondered if she'd ever truly understand the value of a mother-in-law who only wanted to help, not control. Sunday arrived quickly. I tidied the apartment, baked Ethan's favorite homemade cookies, and bought Chloe's preferred grape juice. Deborah decided to visit her sister, giving us privacy. When the doorbell rang, my heart quickened. I opened the door to find David holding Chloe's hand, with Ethan beside him. No sign of Stephanie. She had an engagement, David explained, answering my unasked question before I could voice it. The kids explored the small apartment with natural childhood curiosity, riddling me with questions about everything. Chloe was especially enchanted by Deborah's collection of porcelain miniatures. "Who's that lady in the pictures, Grandma?" she asked, pointing to a photo frame on the bookshelf. "That's Deborah, my friend. We're living together now." "Like a sleepover that never ends?" she asked, eyes sparkling. I laughed. Something like that. While the kids devoured cookies and watched cartoons on the small living room TV, David and I talked in the kitchen. He looked utterly exhausted, with deep bruised circles under his eyes. "How are things?" I asked, pouring us both coffee. "Complicated," he admitted, rubbing his temples. "The nanny quit after 3 days. Stephanie's swamped with work and the kids. I've been staying late at the office." I took a slow sip of coffee, waiting. I knew there was more. "We hired a full-time housekeeper, but it's not the same. The kids miss you." "I miss you." I looked at my son, the boy for whom I'd sacrificed everything, now a man wrestling with the raw consequences of his own words and actions. "Son, you'll always be welcome here. And the children, too. But I've learned that respect isn't begged for. It's earned. And sometimes it's fiercely demanded." He lowered his eyes to his coffee cup, shame painting his cheeks. "I know asking you to come back would be selfish of me," he finally said, his voice barely a whisper. "But I want you to know that my house will always be open to you. On your terms. On my terms." Words I never expected to hear from him. "Thank you, David. That means a lot." When they left, I stood at the window, watching the 3 of them get into the car. Chloe waved enthusiastically. Ethan formed a heart with his hands. David looked up one last time before getting into the vehicle. In that moment, I felt a strange, profound mix of sadness and liberation. I loved my son and my grandchildren deeply, but I finally understood that love should never, ever cost us our dignity. In the following weeks, something truly unexpected happened. Stephanie started bringing the kids to visit me during the week, not just on Sundays with David. Sometimes she'd stay for coffee, a tentative peace settling between us. Other times, she'd use the opportunity to run errands while I spent time with my grandkids. On one of those visits, she brought her mother, Barbara, a thin woman, already frail from her illness, but with lively, observant eyes. "My daughter talks a lot about you," she said as we shared tea. "Says you're a talented artist." I blushed with the unexpected, genuine compliment. "I just paint as a hobby." "I showed her the tote bag you painted for me," Stephanie explained. "She used to sew too when I was little." And so, curiously, a quiet connection formed between the 3 of us. Women of different generations, united by handmade skills and the shared, complex experiences of motherhood. One Sunday afternoon, about 5 months after I'd moved out, David showed up alone. He seemed deeply nervous, clutching a folder of documents. "Mom, I need to show you something." He opened the folder, his hands trembling slightly, and pulled out official papers. "It's the deed to an apartment, small but new in a good neighborhood. Just a 10-minute walk from our house." I looked at the documents, a wave of confusion washing over me. "I bought it for you," he explained, his voice thick with emotion. "With the money I was saving for a new car, plus a loan I took out. I was utterly speechless. "I'm not asking you to leave here if you don't want to," he quickly added, seeing my reaction. "The apartment is yours either way. You can rent it, sell it, do whatever you prefer. But I wanted you to know I'm trying to make things right in the only way I can." Silent tears, unbidden, streamed down my face. They weren't from joy or sadness, but from a profound, complex emotion I couldn't yet name. "Why, David?" He took a ragged breath. "Because I finally understood what you meant about respect. Because I realized I spent years focused on what you could do for me, without ever thinking about what I could do for you. Because..." His voice faltered, raw with regret. "Because you're my mom, and I almost lost you because of my own damn selfishness." In that moment, I saw again the sensitive boy who once promised to buy his mother a house when he became a lawyer. He'd been lost for a while in the ambitious, stressed man he'd become. But he was clawing his way back. "Thank you, son. I'll think about it carefully." When he left, I sat looking at the documents spread on the table. My own apartment, just a stone's throw from my grandkids. It was tempting, so very tempting. But something fundamental had shifted within me in these past months. I'd discovered an independence I'd never known, a quiet strength that had always been there, just dormant. New friends at the community center, my small business of hand-painted items, Deborah's Warm Company. 2 days later, I called David. "I've decided what to do with the apartment," I said. "And?" he asked, a hopeful edge to his voice. "I'm going to keep it, but I'm not moving in right now. Maybe in the future. For now, I want to continue where I am, with the life I've built." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "I understand, Mom. It's your decision." "But I have a proposal," I continued. "Stephanie's mother needs a comfortable place to spend her last months. The apartment would be perfect for her, close to you for the care she needs." That would be incredibly generous of you, Mom," he responded, genuine surprise coloring his voice. "It's not generosity, David. It's humanity. Something I'm slowly, painfully relearning. Today, a year after that fateful afternoon when I was called a useless old woman, my life is vibrant, wholly different from what I ever imagined at 67. Stephanie's mother passed away 2 months ago, peacefully, in the apartment David bought for me, and that I had lent to her. Stephanie and I have developed a relationship of mutual respect, not exactly a close friendship, but a quiet, sincere understanding. I still live with Deborah, though I spend some weekends at my apartment, especially when I want more time with my grandkids. Ethan is finally getting help for dyslexia. David eventually listened to my suggestion and is progressing well. Chloe, at 6, already declares she wants to be an artist, like Grandma. My small production of hand-painted items has truly blossomed. I now have 3 stores that proudly sell my products, and I was recently invited to give a fabric painting workshop at the city's cultural center. David and I have dinner together once a month, just the 2 of us. We're rebuilding our relationship, not as dependent mother and son, but as adults who respect and love each other, forging a new path. At one of these dinners, he asked me, his voice hesitant, "Did you truly forgive me, Mom? For everything I said and did?" I looked at my son, the man he'd become with all his flaws and newfound qualities. "I forgave you, son. But you know what's more important? I forgave myself." "What do you mean?" he asked, a crease in his brow. "For having believed even for a while that my worth was only in my usefulness to others. For having forgotten that I am a complete person, a woman of substance, not just a mother or a grandmother. He nodded slowly, thoughtfully. You know you're not a useless old woman, right? You never were. I smiled, a profound peace settling over me, the kind that only comes from belated self-discovery. I know that now. In fact, I've discovered I'm just getting started. And it's true. At 68, I feel like I'm living a vibrant new phase, rich with possibilities. It's not the life I planned. Certainly not the one I imagined when I sold my house to live with my son. It's better. It's mine. Sometimes, the cruelest words can crack us open, awakening in us the courage we didn't know we possessed. You're just a useless old woman, were the words that freed me to discover who I really am, beyond the roles of mother and grandmother. And what I discovered was a strong, creative, and dignified woman who still has much to offer the world on her own terms.